So today we are going to be talking about a semi-floating axle and a full floating axle. So here I have a semi-floating axle, and a semi-floating axle is basically an axle shaft which on each side that is splined on the inner end where it mates to the differential, and has a wheel flange where the wheel studs mount at the other end. So for the semi-floating axle setup is commonly used on a half-ton and lighter 4x4 trucks in the rear. The setup is also allows the axle shaft to be the means of propulsion and also support the weight of the vehicle. The main difference between the full and semi-floating axle setup is the number of bearings. The semi-floating axle features only one bearing, and while the full floating assembly has bearings in both wheel hubs. The other difference is about the axle. So to remove the semi-floating axle, one has to remove the wheel first, and if such axle breaks, the wheel is most likely to come off the vehicle. And then the semi-floating design is found under most 1/2 ton and lighter trucks and SUVs, and rear-wheel drive passenger cars, usually being smaller or less expensive models. So here we have a full floating axle carries the vehicle's weight on the axle casing, not the half shafts. They serve only to transmit torque from the differential to the wheels. The float inside an assembly that carries the vehicle's weight. Thus the only stress is most endured in torque. Full floating axle shafts are retained by a flange bolt to the hub, while the hub and bearings are retained on a spline by a large nut. In contrast to a semi-floating design carries the weight of the vehicle on the axle shaft itself. There's a single bearing at the end of the axle housing that carries the load from the axle that the axle rotates through. The full floating design is typically used on most 3 to 4 and 1 ton light trucks, medium duty trucks, heavy duty trucks, as well as most agricultural applications such as large tractors, self-propelled agricultural machinery. There are a few exceptions such as many Land Rover vehicles and in American stock car racing since the early 1960s. Overall, the assembly can carry more weight than a semi-floating or non-floating axle assembly.